obviously it was used to justify the continuation of lockdowns far beyond what was necessary. It's being used today to keep schools closed. You have the education unions saying that even after they're vaccinated, if there are any cases of community spread, that if there's even one case of community spread in a 2-week period, they will not go back to school. So, this is a recipe for keeping schools closed forever. You had our district attorney in San Francisco use COVID as the excuse to empty out all the jails. You had Gavin Newsom use COVID as the excuse for billions of dollars of no-bid contracts to his political supporters. And so, you have this suspending of normal operating procedure of the way that government works. And if we're going to suspend it every time there's one COVID case, well, that's not going to work.
So let's shift a little to lockdowns and generally what's happened in the last year, because basically from almost the day we're posting this, it was pretty much a year ago right now, 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Now it's a year later and people, Biden's double masking and, California, you still can't go to indoor restaurants or go to the gym. And I guess we're going to partially open on April 1st or something like that. But so much of this does seem attached to big tech because they're letting you say certain things about lockdowns and not letting you say certain things. Is your belief that there was just no science behind the lockdowns at all at any point?
Well, I guess at the very beginning of COVID, we didn't exactly know. And so I don't fault anyone too much for the decisions that were made to lock down back in March or April. We simply didn't know. As you'll recall, we were seeing what was happening in Italy. The hospitals were completely overrun. And so this idea of locking things down to buy time so that our medical system didn't get overrun, I could understand the argument. But I think by last summer, it was becoming pretty clear that lockdowns had an enormous cost to them and a very unclear benefit. And I think as the year progressed, we had more and more data around this. Certainly, I think by the fall, anyone who was paying attention to that data would have, should have been against lockdowns. I think even by May, I was tweeting that the right policy was to go all in on masks and to not do lockdowns. So, I think the data was clear even by then.
So what do you think was going on? In the mind, we'll get to California more specifically, but generally, in the mind of Gavin Newsom, in the mind of Gretchen Whitmer, in the mind of Andrew Cuomo, these people that, in essence, destroyed their states in a lot of ways versus Texas and scary Florida, what do you think they were thinking? Because I can't find any science anywhere. I get what you're saying. Yeah, for a couple weeks you could try it and there was this unsure moment and all that. But then after that.
Yeah, I don't know exactly why they thought the political calculus, it would benefit them to have this extreme lockdown policy. But I think there was sort of a collective failure of elite thinking on COVID and really on many other issues. And it really, you have to go back to the WHO getting just about everything wrong from the beginning. First, all the way back in January saying that it wasn't clear that there was human-to-human contact. And then when it was clear that there was, they greatly exaggerated the case fatality rate by claiming that there weren't a lot of asymptomatic cases. We would later learn that there was a huge number of asymptomatic cases, and therefore we should, the infection fatality rate was more like 1/10 the case fatality rate, but they got that wrong and sort of miseducated us, and then that led to us thinking the virus would be even more severe than it was. Then they were wrong about masks, and so was Fauci and the CDC. I wrote a blog post in early April saying that masks should be the policy. I thought that was the type of thing that was low cost, high benefit, and the type of thing we should be doing, not lockdowns. And then, they got lockdowns wrong, and then they reversed course on that. And so there's just been systematically, I think the health establishment just seems like they've gotten everything wrong here. And it kind of, just to tie it back to the censorship thing, it shows how ridiculous it is to maintain this position that we can censor based on what experts tell us, as YouTube has been doing. YouTube has been censoring COVID videos that have been put up that they say contradict the WHO, apparently without irony, because no one has contradicted the WHO more than the WHO itself.
Yeah.
But this idea that we can simply rely on experts, I think that, it has to be that has to be one of the big takeaways of COVID, is that we cannot rely on these experts. They're just wrong way too often. And even, Fauci today and the guidance we're getting today is far too conservative. Fauci recently said that we might have to wear a mask until 2022. Well, why? are you saying the vaccines don't work? Because it seems to me that the messaging we're getting now is effectively anti-vax. If the vaccines work.
Right. They've all become anti-vaxxers. Yeah.
Yeah. If the vaccines work, and Biden has now said that every American adult can get one by the end of May, why would we need any more restrictions after Memorial Day? And so I was in favor of a mask policy early on, but I do not support having a mask policy once vaccines are available. Why?
So you guys were just talking about zeroism on the show, and that it's a perfect segue for that. So can you explain that?
Yeah. So Jonathan Chait actually came up with it. I think he's a writer for the,
New Yorker, or I always forget if it's New Yorker or New York Magazine.
I think it's a magazine.
Okay.
Yeah. I think he's probably. I don't think he's red pilled. I think he's pretty liberal, but he's pretty.
He might have called me racist once or twice in a tweet.
Okay. Okay. Well, he wrote one good column where he coins this term zeroism, and what it basically is a refusal to deal with COVID according to cost benefit analysis, and to insist that even one case of COVID is unacceptable because somebody can die. And therefore, we need to have a policy of stamping out every last case of COVID. That's zeroism. The problem with zeroism is that we're never going to get rid of COVID. There are always going to be a smattering of cases somewhere. It's a seasonal illness. It's going to return. And the problem is that if every time it returns, we now have the justification for the politicians to engage in all these emergency measures, it gives them extraordinary powers. So, yeah, that's the thing that I think needs to be challenged. And look at how zeroism is being used right now, or has already been. Obviously, it was used to justify the continuation of lockdowns far beyond what was necessary. It's being used today to keep schools closed. You have the education unions saying that even after they're vaccinated, if there are any cases of community spread, that if there's even one case of community spread in a 2-week period, they will not go back to school. So, this is a recipe for keeping schools closed forever. You had our district attorney in San Francisco use COVID as the excuse to empty out all the jails. You had Gavin Newsom use COVID as the excuse for billions of dollars of no-bid contracts to his political supporters. And so, you have this suspending of normal operating procedure of the way that government works. And if we're going to suspend it every time there's one COVID case, well, that's not going to work.
Are you worried, though, that is the net effect of this thing, that they pushed us for a year and whoever they are, but, in effect, the system. So, boy, we can really get people to destroy their own lives and not see their family and not travel. And yet they'll do it in some places like Florida, but we can get people in California to act like sheep, and there's almost no pushback. So why not keep pushing?
Well, I think there's a lot of pushback now. Look, I think there are a lot of people who are frightened of COVID, and there will be some PTSD about it. But I think that, we're seeing now with the Newsom recall that I think people are very upset about the restrictions and the hypocrisy of it, the fact that Newsom was going to French Laundry, and, even during the time when he was doubling down on lockdowns and telling people they couldn't go to the beach, which, that makes no sense because there's been no real outdoor spread. So you had that, he was sending his own kids to private school when, the public schools were still closed and still are closed. So I think people are pretty riled up by this. And I do expect that people will want to go back to the way things were pre-COVID very, very quickly. But I think the battle to be joined over the next few months is the battle against zeroism, and I expect that we'll win that battle. I expect that if Newsom sticks to the zeroist position, he'll be defeated. I mean, the recall election will be in, I think, around August. I think every American who wants a vaccine will be able to get one in May. And so I think to the extent that California still has all these restrictions, I think every week pressure is going to build. People are going to, in California, going to look and say, well, wait, none of these other states are doing this stuff. Why are we still restricted?
If you're looking for more honest and thoughtful conversations about politics instead of nonstop yelling, check out our politics playlist. And if you want to watch full interviews on a variety of topics, watch our full episode playlist all right over here. And to get notified of all future videos, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell.